Hello and welcome to Weekly Wind-Up. I'm Kyle Warwick. Joining me today is Jan Scrine. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Jan joins us from the Milestone Society, a group that's initiated a number of heritage projects in the local area that has led to the Highwayman project, which is a project we'll come to touch on shortly. Welcome to the programme again, Jan. So if you could start by telling us a little bit about the Milestone Society. What the organisation does and some of the heritage projects that you've helped get underway.
Yes, the Society was founded in 2000 by some enthusiasts who wanted to demonstrate that milestones are actually quite a significant part of our past heritage. They show you a time that was when travel was slow, when the roads were in terrible condition, and they're sitting there quietly by the wayside, and people ignore them, they get damaged in road traffic accidents and so on. So the Society was set up to raise public awareness. And in Yorkshire, we have got a lot of milestones remaining. As you know, Kyle, you've seen a lot of them. And so we have a lot, and we've had some projects, including the Beyond Graffiti project, where we introduced the bricklaying students at Kirklees College to stoneworking. So they learned about dry stone walling, and they carved some waymarkers that have been used in Dewsbury Country Park. Well, after that, we were asked if we could help to do something to restore a Packhorse track in the Yorkshire Colne Valley, the one that runs from Cophill towards Milestone. So through the People's Lottery, on the ITV competition, we won nearly £50,000 to restore the Packhorse track. And then we had the grand opening of that event, which is a wonderful walk around the valley. It could be anything between 5 and 8 miles with lots of different sorts of waymarkers. And so we had a grand opening for that, which you filmed. It's on our YouTube programme, and that was great fun. And so, well, what do we do next? Well, we found out when we were running our various projects, talking to the students, talking to the cubs and beavers and so on, that they had no understanding of imperial measurements. They had no idea how many yards there were in a mile. Now, does it matter because it's metric? Well, actually, our motorways, for example, are still calibrated in yards. It's 800 yards to the next whatever it is. So I said to some of the students who are learning to drive, well, how do you know how far 800 yards is? They go, well, we just drive till we get there. Perhaps not the right answer. So we thought, what we'll do is, how do we get through in a fun way to younger people about imperial measurements and raise their awareness? Of course, milestones are calibrated in miles and sometimes in yards. And we'd had a wonderful highwayman and actor, that was Paul McIntosh, and he'd come along for Beyond Graffiti project at Oakwell Hall. He'd been along on the opening day for the Crossing the Pennines Trail. So we thought, well, where do we slot this into the national curriculum? And would you believe, of course, they still teach that poem, The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes, at Key Stage 2 Upper Primary. So what we've raised the funding for from Heritage Lottery Fund is for a national project. We're developing an educational resource, and the educational resource will tell children about distances. So we're having our authentic highwayman, who's going to be filmed, of course, in the Colne Valley, because we all love it. He's going to be filmed in the Colne Valley, and he's going to be talking about finding his way around the countryside and seeing these markers with distances on. And alongside that, we've got a professional educational resource developer who's written a pack for teachers to help them explain the poem The Highwayman, but also activities related to it, is history, geography, maths and so on, in a fun way. So they will all be put on a teaching resource on one of the websites, and sometime in the next few months, teachers will be able to find help by downloading the film of The Highwayman and the resource with it. So that's all being done, bringing some more publicity to the area.
Indeed, yeah. And so is it something that you've found that this engagement with history, if you like, because maybe there is a detachment from history amongst young people to a certain extent. Do you think that this kind of active engagement, and Paul is somebody who to a big extent lives his character. Do you think
Absolutely.
that's something that helps with the teaching of things like that?
I think anything that helps to interest younger people in our history, particularly if it's done in a fun way like this, but professionally, of course, then I think it's very good, because we found when we were talking to the scouts and so on, and to the students, they've no idea, and if you present it interestingly, they find it interesting and they learn something. In the days before sat-navs, before maps even.
Absolutely. I think, you know, even from school, I think I probably learned the most when I didn't realise I was learning.
Yes.
If you like, it's almost tricking us into learning. But no, so you mentioned a few of the past projects that the Milestone Society has been involved in, the crossing the Pennines and things. How important are local people to maintaining that history, do you feel?
The milestones and also finger posts are very much local. They are distinctively local. They're different in every town, every county, every area. The styles are different, the shapes are different. And so local people, we hope, take an interest in them, because then sometimes they can help restore them. We've got guidance notes on our website, or even if they've just got damaged or broken, they can report it to the local authorities or the parish councils across the rest of the country, because they quite often have a little bit of funding that can do up a broken milestone satisfactorily.
Yeah.
So local interest is absolutely vital.
Indeed. And with the Highwayman project, do you envisage this being something that is specific to the Yorkshire area, or do you envisage it being something that maybe teachers across the country can
This is
access?
totally national. This is a national project. It will go out absolutely on every teaching website we can find as a resource to teachers across the whole of the country. So Paul McIntosh isn't enacting so much the Yorkshire Highwayman that he normally does, John Levis and Swift Nick. He's actually acting as a generic highwayman, talking about milestones, and in the film there were milestones shown from different parts of the country to give examples.
Yeah, absolutely. And what has been the process leading up to this? I know you've mentioned kind of the projects that have led into this one, if you like, but what has been the actual logistics for yourself in terms of organising and getting everything to a place where you can begin filming?
Well, the initial thing was I couldn't think how to make imperial distance measurements, yards and so on, interesting. And so I was muttering about this to my daughter-in-law, who happens to be a teaching assistant. And she said, well, why don't you link it to that poem, The Highwayman, the way you do when you're doing talks? Because when I'm doing talks to younger people, I always talk about highwaymen because they're part of road history. So I thought, oh, that sounds a good idea. So then I found an educational developer who could actually do the work for us professionally, because it's very different giving a talk to doing it for a curriculum project. And then we applied for Heritage Lottery funding, and Heritage Lottery were excited about it because anything that engages younger people. And they also said, could you possibly think about adding on some restoration work? So as part of the project, we're also, a different section of the society, are restoring 6 unique cast iron mileposts down in Stratford-on-Avon.
Right.
And alongside that, we've got a poetry competition being run from Marsden, but it's national. So Write Out Loud are running a poetry competition. The theme is milestone or milestones. Could be those quirky lumps of rock by the wayside, or it could be a milestone in your life, a milestone event.
Yeah.
And that's going to be judged by a poet called Brian Patton, who's one of the famous Mersey poets. And there's going to be a prize giving in the summer. So if anybody who looks on our website, www.findingtheway.co.uk, can find how to enter a poem in the competition. First prize is £500, Kyle, get right in.
Everybody could do with a bit of that. You see, I'm learning something already, because I didn't realise that the Milestone Society was a national organisation. Is that so? Because obviously my point of reference is very much the Packhorse Trail and things like that on the moors around here. So milestones are something that are nationwide, and the society is involved with the upkeep of them.
Well, we try to promote the upkeep because they're actually owned generally by the local highways authorities or the town
Right.
councils, the parish councils. So all we can do is either raise funding to help them restore them or encourage them to raise funding themselves. But yes, there's nearly 20,000 milestones nationally dotted around, or have been. And so we are fairly well represented in a lot of counties, some areas not quite so well represented. But yep, so it's very much a national society.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of councils who would be quite happy for a bit of extra funding, whatever it's for, I imagine, at the moment.
Yes.
But going forward, what do you envisage the outcome of the Highwayman project to be, and what are your hopes for it beyond its initial release, if you like?
We're hoping that it'll be on the internet, available for many years for teachers, because the younger teachers don't have the same history grounding that us older people have. And in fact, apparently 50% of teachers have got less than 10 years service, which tells you a lot are new to the profession.
Yeah.
And so if this resource helps them understand, makes it easier to teach things like imperial measurements and so on, then we'll have a long-term effect. And if the children go home and tell their parents, we saw a highwayman, maybe the parents will take an interest too.
Indeed, yeah. Well, you've brought something along with you as well. I think this is in relation to some of the work that you've done with the Milestone Society, in particular the Crossing the Pennine, is that correct? You worked with a couple of people on that project, and would you like to just tell us a little bit about what you've brought with you?
Well, what I brought along today is the British Empire Medal, and this was awarded in the New Year's Honours Award. I feel quite embarrassed about it because I got it, because it was really down to the work by Val and Colin and all the other volunteers who helped putting the Crossing the Pennines Trail project together. Although we got the funding was actually to repair a Packhorse track, not for the rest of the activities and for setting up the trail. So the trail was set up by volunteers. And the volunteers, because I was fairly vocal about how we did it and got it done, the volunteers put me forward for the British Empire Medal, and 2 years ago, and it was awarded in the New Year's Honours. So as a result, we've got a trip to the Buckingham Palace to the garden party, but it was presented by the Lord Lieutenant last week.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, so something that you... look at that. Yeah. So this is something that you see more as a award for everybody than something for yourself. It's definitely award.
It's an award for the society for its efforts. Yes.
Indeed, yeah, and recognition of all the hard work that you've been putting in as well. I mean, it must congratulate you all on the hard work that you have put in. And thank you very much for joining us today, Jan. It's been great speaking to you again. And hopefully we'll be able to speak again once the Highwayman project's completed and out in the public.
Thank you very much indeed, Carl. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to the filming.
Indeed. So that's all we've got time for on this episode of Weekly Wind Up. As always, if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can find us on our social media platforms. Join us again next week for another episode of Weekly Wind Up. Goodbye.